Right, so before I start, the flower on my right, beautiful zinnia, is grown by yours truly, just like the sunflower that you have seen in my previous videos. I just wanted you to know that. I also wanted you to know just how grateful I have been to all of you for your support to my journalism on buymecoffee.com and Patreon. If you think my journalism is worth supporting, then you can also consider becoming a part of this movement. Now that this ritual is out of my way, let's return to today's topic. 11 months of indiscriminate bombing by Israeli terrorists, at least 3 adverse ruling by the International Court of Justice, barbaric slaughtering of more than 40,000 civilians, including women, children, and babies, mass rape of Palestinians currently held hostages by US-backed Israeli Defense Forces, and BBC still thinks that it needs to refer to Israeli action as alleged. At least that's what its latest headline about the murder of a Palestinian blogger who was documenting Israeli crime in Gaza read. You know what's alleged, dear war criminals in the BBC, writing such horrible headlines to dehumanize a group of people called Palestinians? Your status as journalists working for an alleged news organization, your existence as humans, and your concern for your loved ones, including your children if you have any, if they have had the misfortune of being born in these surroundings poisoned by your presence. Because you are not humans. You are monsters who do not deserve to live in a civilized society. There will be a special place in hell for all of you. As if Israeli genocide in Gaza was not enough, and how it enjoyed considerable support from the likes of the BBC in the West. The Zionist terrorists have now begun massacring innocent civilians in the occupied West Bank. And even though the UN resolution, Geneva Convention, and the International Court of Justice may have laid down very clear, specific guidelines and ruling against Israel, this doesn't stop BBC's James Landale from showing his brazen biases in favor of Israel's genocidal campaign, as he says it so shamelessly on BBC. The presenter asked him about Israel calling it a counter-terrorism operation in the occupied West Bank. What does James say? It clearly is. He's giving his verdict. He's approving Israel's terrorist activities, Israeli war crimes. On a TV channel funded by your money, my money, a lot of money, £169 every year. Clearly, we are funding their propaganda, their lunacy, and their support for war crimes.
Yeah, because the Israelis are calling this a counter-terrorism operation.
Yeah, and it clearly is. There are armed Palestinian factions in the West Bank that we know are supported by Iran. They get weapons from Iran, they get training from Iran, and so there is a clear logic to what the Israelis are doing. But that doesn't necessarily mean, in the eyes of Western governments, the way they're doing it is something that the Western governments can support, because today they're voicing their severe concern about this, what is an incredibly large operation at the moment that potentially could have wider consequences.
Little did this chap realize that he just ignored the UN resolution, Geneva Convention rules, and the ICJ verdict. Wish he had such convictions in calling out Israeli war crimes. But there, he and his BBC colleagues will always use alleged, creating the seed of doubt in people's minds about Israeli war crimes. Meanwhile, Palestinian children will have to live with the misfortune of being perhaps the only group of people on this planet who will have to suffer from polio. James Landale, Yolande Nell, Martin Croxall, Anita McVeigh, none of them will ever be moved by this extraordinary development. They will continue to disgrace the profession of journalism. This is what the World Health Organization chief, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, had to say on the 3-day pause by Israeli terrorists to allow the mass vaccination of over 600,000 babies against polio in Gaza.
On Sunday, WHO and our partners will begin a polio vaccination campaign in Gaza, in which we aim to reach more than 640,000 children under 10 years of age. The campaign will involve 2 doses of vaccine given in 2 rounds, 4 weeks apart. More than 1.2 million doses of vaccine have been delivered to Gaza, and 400,000 more doses will arrive soon. We have trained more than 2,180 health workers and community outreach workers to provide vaccination and inform communities about the campaign. Our aim is to reach at least 90% vaccination coverage during each round of the campaign to stop the current outbreak and prevent the international spread of polio. The campaign will be delivered in a phased approach over 3 days in each round, starting with Central Gaza, followed by South Gaza, and then North Gaza. I thank the Palestine Ministry of Health, UNICEF and UNRWA, and others for their partnership in this campaign. I welcome the commitment to humanitarian pauses in specific areas to allow the vaccination campaign to be carried out. Due to insecurity, damage to roads and infrastructure, and population movement and displacement, 3 days in each area is unlikely to be enough to achieve adequate coverage. Vaccination coverage will be monitored throughout the campaign, and it has been agreed that vaccination will be extended by 1 day wherever necessary. The vaccination teams must be protected and allowed to conduct the campaign safely. We urge all parties to ensure their protection and that of health facilities and children. Humanitarian pauses are welcome, but ultimately, the only solution to safeguard the health of the children of Gaza is a ceasefire. The best medicine is peace.
Elsewhere, our dear Kamala Harris has just expressed her allegiance to Israel, a duty which every American president hopeful has to discharge to become the commander-in-chief of the United States of America.
President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change.
Fire done.
But
no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No.
Now you know who is actually running America. It's amazing how a small country built on stolen land by a group of thugs from the UK, Poland, and the US has managed to wield so much clout on the so-called developed world and their politicians. The politicians in the West are simply more than happy to serve as loyal dogs for Zionists. And if the US is more than happy to serve as the loyal dog of Israel, you think chaps like David Lammy can afford to keep his morality and self-respect intact? This is what the British Foreign Office said, the Foreign Office headed by David Lammy, to Israeli genocide in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Its statement read, and I quote, "The UK is deeply concerned by the ongoing IDF military operation in the occupied West Bank. We recognize Israel's need to defend itself against security threats, but we are deeply worried by the methods Israel has employed and by reports of civilian casualties and the destruction of civilian infrastructure." End of quote. Lammy and his bosses are so twisted that they still think Israel has a right to defend against the people it occupies. And these chaps are running our country. That's how ignorant, uneducated these people are. So to those who justified Israeli genocidal campaign in Gaza, including David Lammy and his boss Keir Starmer, a so-called human rights lawyer before becoming a politician, that you justified the genocidal campaign in Gaza by blaming Hamas for 7th of October attacks. How do you justify Israeli brutalities in the occupied West Bank where there is no Hamas? On what ground can you say that Israel has the right to defend itself here? The political class in the West has completely exposed itself. They have no shame in belonging to a group of people bereft of morality and human values. I can just go on and on and on, but I know it's pointless exercise because we are dealing with shameless people, shameless politicians. Anyway, that's it from me. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.